Here's a secret no vendor, consultant, or software provider will tell you. The success of your ERP has nothing to do with the ERP system itself. The companies that get ERP right are not the ones with the best system. They're the ones with the best approach and implementation strategy. In this video, I'll show you the 5 things winning ERP teams do differently and why they consistently succeed while others fail. So a few months ago, I was called into a global manufacturing company based out of Dubai that was halfway through their ERP rollout. Everything looked great when I first saw it. Top-tier vendors, big consulting firm, clean project plans, and millions invested. But beneath the surface, the project was falling apart. The teams were frustrated, the data was in a mess, approvals took longer than before, and no one could agree on why things weren't working. So I sat down with their CIO and he told me, Noel, we chose the best ERP on the market. Why is it still failing? And I asked him one question. Show me how you designed the process before you designed the system. And so he flipped through his binder and everything inside was technicals, all about modules, about configurations, integrations, and timelines. Not a single page on how the business actually works. And that's when it hit him. They didn't have a technology problem, they had an approach problem. Because successful ERP projects don't start with the system, they start with clarity. Clarity on the process, the people, the decisions, the data, and the outcomes. And that's exactly what winning ERP teams do differently. And here's how we actually fixed their ERP rollout. I took the team through the R.E.S.T framework. It's basically a reset framework I use when a project is failing but doesn't need a restart. So R stands for repair one critical process. So we started with their biggest pain point, which was procure to pay. It had missing data, pointless approvals, and constant rework. We remapped the real steps, removed the noise, and fixed the upstream data, and made the process workable again. Now that single repair immediately stabilized the project. E stands for eliminate bottlenecks and workflow noise. Most of their delays came from approvals buried inside the ERP. We moved them into a workflow tool where people could approve on their phones and we validated data before it reached the system. And so their cycle time dropped almost overnight. S is about standardizing rules and data. Every team had its own version of the process. Procurement, finance, and operations weren't following the same rules, so the ERP kept breaking. We aligned the rules, cleaned the data definitions, and put clear ownership in place. Once everything was standardized, the ERP stopped contradicting itself. T is about transforming the workflow after clarity. Only after we finished all of these steps did we redesign the experience. We simplified the steps, automated what made sense, and cleaned the screens and made the workflow intuitive. Users finally understood how the process worked and stopped fighting the system. And for that client, here's what changed. The constant errors disappeared, obviously. The team stopped blaming the ERP and approvals moved quickly instead of sitting for days. The data became clean and predictable, and the CIO finally saw what was wrong all along. It wasn't the ERP, guys. It was just the approach. R.E.S.T gave them that reset the project needed without starting over, without replacing the system, and without burning more time or money. So in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 patterns I see in every successful ERP project. The same pattern that separates the companies who get value from their ERP from the ones who spend millions and still end up in chaos. I'm Noel Benjamin DeCosta. I've spent the last 2 decades helping companies around the world design and implement and rescue ERP programs, from multi-country rollouts to enterprise-wide process redesigns. With AI, I show them how to embed it naturally so that systems complement each other rather than work separately. And in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 things winning ERP teams do differently, the patterns I see in every successful project, regardless of industry, software, or size. And if you want clarity on how to run ERP the right way, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And if you want help applying these principles to your own project, drop a comment, ERP reset, and I'll reach out to you personally at no cost and point you in the right direction. So let's get into it. So what do winning ERP projects do differently? Number one, they start with the business problem and not the tool. So most failing ERP projects begin with the wrong question. Which ERP should we buy? But winning projects start with a better question. What business problem are we trying to fix? Before they touch a module, a demo, or a vendor pitch, winning teams dig into the reality of the business. Where are we losing time? Where are we leaking money? Where do customers get stuck? Which processes break every month? What workarounds never seem to die? So here's a quick example. A retail client once asked me to help them choose between SAP, Oracle, and Dynamics. And I asked them, okay, guys, what problem are you trying to solve? So they said, our stock updates are always late. Customers see items available that are not available, and returns takes weeks. So instead of starting with the process, we mapped the actual process. And we found that the real issue wasn't the ERP at all. It was 3 approval layers for simple stock adjustments, inconsistent material data, and a workflow held together by emails. Once we fixed that, the choice of the ERP became obvious, and the implementation became 10 times simpler. And here's what I've seen. The tool doesn't create any form of transformation. The problem creates clarity. The process creates the direction, and the tool simply supports the decision. Winning teams don't shop for software, they design for outcomes. Number 2, they map processes first and then they select the technology. So failing teams jump straight into the system. They design screens, they tweak fields, they argue about modules. Winning teams don't touch the tool until they understand the flow. They map the processes before they build anything. So, who starts the process? What decisions needs approvals? What data is required at each step? Which exceptions actually happen in real life? And which steps should be automated and not manually chased? So a logistics company once asked me to optimize their ERP purchasing module. But when we mapped the real flow, we discovered that buyers were chasing 7 different approvers. Half the data needed for a PO lived inside emails. No one agreed on what urgent means, and 40% of all PRs were rejected because the process was unclear. And the issue again wasn't the ERP, the issue was the process made no sense. So once we fixed the flow, the technology became obvious. The ERP handled the transactions and the data. ServiceNow ran the approval workflows. A simple portal improved user experience, and analytics sat on top of one clean data layer. And everything finally worked together. Because when the process is right, the system falls into place. But when the process is wrong, the system becomes chaotic, no matter which ERP you buy. Number 3 is they assign real owners to business outcomes. So failing ERP projects have one thing in common. No one actually owns the process, not IT, not consultants, not project managers. Winning teams do something different. They assign a process owner, someone in the business with the authority and the accountability to say, this is how the process starts. This is the data we need. These are the KPIs that are important for us. These decisions and designs make sense, and this one doesn't. And here's the final decision. So I once worked with a company where procurement, finance, and operations all wanted different approval rules for the same procurement process. Procurement wanted speed, The finance wanted control, and usually that happens, and operations wanted shortcuts. IT just wanted the emails to stop. Without a process owner, every workshop turned into a negotiation, and the ERP ended up bloated, inconsistent, and impossible to maintain. When the leadership finally appointed a single process owner, one person became responsible for the entire procure to pay flow, and everything changed. They set the rules, they aligned the teams, they defined the KPIs, and suddenly the ERP became clear and the workflow actually worked. And so here's a pro tip for you. ERP succeeds when the business owns the process, and it fails when IT owns it by an accident. So a process owner kills the chaos and creates direction and protects the system from turning into a Frankenstein. So number 4 is they design for usability and not just compliance. So failing ERP projects focus on one thing. Does it meet the compliance requirement? And then winning teams ask a far more important question. Will anyone actually want to use this? Because compliance gives you a system that works on paper, and usability gives you a system that people actually use in real life. So winning teams ask, how many clicks does this take? Can a new employee do this without training? Does this screen show what users actually need? And are we designing for auditors or the people doing the work? And then they simplify, right? So it's all about fewer fields, fewer steps, fewer approvals, cleaner screens, and faster decision points. A finance team once showed me their new compliant vendor creation form. And it had 52 fields. I'm not kidding, it had 52 fields. Only 7 were required for the process. And the result was that users avoided the system entirely. They sent Excel sheets to AP, and the compliance team blamed everything on the lack of training. But the problem wasn't the training, it was the design. Once we redesigned the form, 7 fields up front, advanced details hidden unless needed, user adoption skyrocketed. The data quality improved and the workflow finally flowed. And so here's what I've seen, right? So adoption isn't a training problem, adoption is a design problem. If the system feels painful, people will escape it. And if the system feels natural, people won't need training to use it. Number 5 is that they launch change management from day one. So failing ERP projects treat change management like a checkbox at the end, whereas winning ERP projects treat it as the foundation from day one, not at go live, not during the UAT, on day one. Winning teams make change part of the project itself. They bring users into the workshops early. They communicate openly and consistently. They show prototypes before anything is final, and they build internal champions in every department. Leaders get trained first because adoption starts at the top, and they run practice cycles long before go live and provide real support after deployment and not just raise a ticket. So I worked with a public sector team that was terrified about a new ERP rollout. Past projects had failed, people felt burned, and no one wanted another system. So instead of forcing a go live, we did something different. We invited users to the very first design session. We showed them early prototypes. We let them test simple workflows months before the UAT. And we asked them what didn't make sense and fixed it. And we trained the leaders to champion the change and not just approve it. By the time we launched it, the users were more confident than the project team. Not because the system was perfect, but because they felt they were part of the journey. And here's the truth. Change isn't something you do at the end. Change is something you build into the project from the start. Winning teams don't manage change, they lead it. So what happens when you run an ERP implementation this way? When companies run ERP the right way, the entire organization feels the shift. Procurement follows one standard workflow, not 6 competing versions. And users finally stop using Excel because the system actually makes their job easier. Approvals drop from days to hours because the flow is designed properly. And your master data becomes consistent. So planning, finance, and reporting stop contradicting each other. And automation starts working naturally with reminders and validations and escalations just happen. Reporting shows the real picture, not just a whole set of spreadsheets, and the business finally starts seeing the ROI, which is all about fewer errors, faster cycles, cleaner audits, and happier teams. So, in my view, winning teams don't get lucky, they just get aligned. It requires a lot of discipline and they get organized. These 5 winning habits are the reasons some ERP programs deliver real transformation, while others turn up into multi-million-dollar botch jobs. In the next video, I'll show you exactly how to fix a broken ERP, even if the project is already delayed or over budget or losing support from the business. If you're in the middle of an ERP mess or trying to prevent one, this channel is for you. Every week, I break down real world scenarios, whether it's about your ERP modernization, about AI, about ServiceNow, and transformation strategies that actually work. If you found this useful, hit the subscribe button and give the video a like. It helps me understand what topics matter most to you. Most organizations run into the same set of issues when trying to get value from their ERP or their AI or workflow tools. They aren't sure where AI actually fits or which problems it should solve. Their ERP or automation choices don't match how the business really works, and projects stall or they get overrun or they never deliver what was expected. So if these challenges sound familiar, I can step in and support you where it helps. There are no assumptions, there's no pressure, and just problem solving. So drop a comment, ERP reset, and I'll reach out personally to you and point you in the right direction at no cost. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.